I've worked as a security guard for nearly 6 years now, mostly in office buildings and small warehouses. I always prided myself on being calm, reliable, and unshakable. My friends would joke that I could spend a week alone in a building with nothing but fluorescent lights and never blink. But nothing in my experience, not petty thefts or drunk tenants, could prepare me for the night I'll never forget, what I now call the night shift watcher. It started on a Thursday. My shift at the Greystone office complex began at 11 p.m., which meant the lobby was eerily quiet, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the sound of the old HVAC system rattling through the empty floors. I walked the usual rounds, checking doors, peeking into vacant offices, making notes in my logbook. Everything was normal, or at least as normal as an empty office building at 2 a.m. can be. Around 1:30 a.m., I was doing my routine check of the 5th floor, which had been unoccupied for years. The carpeted hallway smelled faintly of mildew, and the dim emergency lights cast long, awkward shadows that stretched into corners. As I passed room 512, I thought I saw something move. A flicker, just the corner of a shadow, like someone ducked behind the door. I shook my head and laughed softly. Okay, first night jitters, I muttered, but the unease clung to me, prickling along my spine like tiny needles. I continued my rounds, but that shadow lingered in my mind. The building had been empty for months. No one had the keys to this floor except maintenance, and they were supposed to be out by 10 p.m. I brushed it off and went down to the ground floor to do another check of the lobby. The cameras were all working, their tiny red lights blinking like steady, unblinking eyes. I sat in the security booth, sipped my lukewarm coffee, and watched the monitors. That's when I noticed it. In the corner of the camera covering the stairwell to the 5th floor, there was a figure. Just for a second, a silhouette, tall, thin, unnervingly still. I froze. My heart started racing. I rewound the footage. The figure wasn't there. Nothing. Must be a glitch, I said aloud, my voice sounding too loud in the empty booth. I kept watching, scanning every angle of the floor, but nothing appeared. Then the noises started. First, it was faint scratching like fingernails against drywall, coming from the 5th floor. I grabbed my flashlight and hesitated at the stairwell entrance. The air felt heavier, warmer than the rest of the building, almost suffocating. Every instinct screamed at me to call it a night, but something, pride, stupidity, curiosity, pushed me forward. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking beneath my boots. The hallway at the top was darker than I remembered. My flashlight beam jittered over peeling paint and broken office doors. The scratching grew louder, now accompanied by a low, almost guttural breathing. I whispered, "Hello," but my voice sounded foreign, swallowed by the building. No response. Nothing. Just the sound of my own heart hammering in my ears. I approached room 512 again. The door was slightly ajar now, which was impossible. I had checked it earlier. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Empty. The room was cold, unnaturally so. My breath fogged in the beam of my flashlight. And then I saw it. On the far wall, written in what looked like black, smeared soot, were the words, "I see you." I stumbled back, my flashlight shaking. I left the room immediately, but the feeling of being watched followed me down the hall. I checked every other room. Empty, dark, silent. I returned to the stairwell and looked down. The 5th floor was empty. Nothing moved. I told myself I'd imagined it. I was exhausted. Maybe caffeine withdrawal. Maybe stress. I went back to the booth, trying to shake off the creeping dread. At 3 a.m., I was checking the cameras again when my stomach dropped. The silhouette was back, this time on the lobby camera. A tall, shadowy figure standing near the front doors, perfectly still, head tilted as if observing me. I leaned closer. Then it started moving, slowly, purposefully toward the elevators. My throat went dry. I grabbed my radio and called the night manager, but there was no response. Static. I left the booth and went toward the lobby. The doors were locked, of course, but the figure wasn't there. Nothing. No footprints, no signs anyone had been there. My rational mind screamed at me. It was a homeless person? A prankster? But the building was in the middle of an industrial district. There was no way anyone could have sneaked in unnoticed, not without triggering alarms. That night, the scratching followed me. Wherever I went, it was behind the walls, above the ceiling tiles, even under the floor. I called the night manager again. This time, he answered, sounding groggy. I tried to explain, but his voice cut out. Then, through the static, I heard it, a low, distorted whisper, almost too soft to catch, say my name. Jay. Jay. My hand shook as I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the stairwell. I didn't stop until I was outside, breathing in the cold night air, staring up at the building that had become a living nightmare. I thought leaving would end it. I thought I could quit. But even now, I feel its presence. I've seen shadows in my apartment corners, felt the same eyes on me, always watching, always waiting. I haven't worked at Greystone since that night, but sometimes when I drive past the building, I swear I see that tall silhouette standing at the lobby window, staring back at me. And I know whatever it is, it's still inside, still watching. I've never told anyone this story, not my family, not my friends. Some might call me paranoid or delusional, but I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know that one night, a building that should have been empty became something else entirely. Something alive. Something hungry. Because here's the thing, they don't just watch. They wait. And I'm never going back. I've always liked night shifts. There's a strange peace in working when the rest of the world sleeps. Most people find it lonely, eerie even, but for me, it's comforting. Or at least it used to be. I was hired as a security guard for a large industrial warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that smelled of oil and dust, with metal catwalks and fluorescent lights that flickered occasionally, like they were trying to blink at you. My first few weeks were uneventful, just the usual rounds, checking doors, walking the perimeter. But that night, in early November, changed everything. The warehouse was massive, with rows upon rows of towering shelves stacked with pallets. I did my rounds on the ground floor first, flashlight in hand, checking for unlocked doors or any sign of trespassers. Everything seemed normal, apart from the usual groaning of the metal racks settling under their own weight. By midnight, I had done 2 full rounds, sitting for a bit in the security office to drink coffee and log my checks. That's when I first heard it, a faint whisper like someone speaking just beyond comprehension. I froze, scanning the empty office, my heart thudding in my chest. "Hello," I called, forcing my voice to sound steady. No answer. The office was empty. I chalked it up to imagination. After all, a lot of people talk themselves into hearing things in the dark. But the feeling lingered, a strange tension crawling along my spine. I grabbed my flashlight and decided to check the second floor, which was mostly storage and rarely visited. The stairs creaked under my weight, and the lights flickered in that irritating, half-broken way that made shadows stretch and twist. Halfway up the stairs, I heard it again, the whisper, this time closer, almost directly behind me. I spun around, shining my flashlight down the stairwell, but no one was there. My pulse quickened. "Get a grip, man," I muttered. I reached the second floor and began my rounds. The warehouse was cavernous, the air smelling faintly of dust and mildew. My flashlight beam bounced off metal racks and stacks of cardboard boxes. Everything was silent except the hum of the ventilation system. That's when I noticed something off. A pallet had been moved. Nothing major, just slightly out of alignment, but it shouldn't have been. The night before, I remembered it was perfectly stacked. I walked closer, shining my light around, but saw nothing. I touched the pallet gingerly. The wood felt cold, icy even, as if it had been refrigerated for hours. I shrugged. Maybe maintenance had come by without me noticing. I resumed my rounds, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. At first, they were almost indistinguishable from the hum of machinery, but then they took shape. Words I couldn't quite understand, punctuated by soft breathing. I felt like I wasn't alone, though every time I turned a corner or shined my flashlight down an aisle, the shadows were empty. Then the whispers stopped. Silence, thick and suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding. I reached the far end of the warehouse, where the loading docks were. Normally, there was a faint echo of the trucks arriving even at night, but tonight it was dead quiet. I checked the doors. They were locked, sealed tight. And then I heard it, a soft scrape of metal against concrete, coming from somewhere inside the rows of shelves. I froze. My mind raced with possibilities. Some drunk kid? A thief? But there were no cameras here, nothing to alert anyone. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and edged forward. The scrape repeated, closer this time, accompanied by a low, guttural breath. I shone my light down the aisle. A shadow darted across the end, too quick to identify. I stepped forward cautiously. The sound of my boots echoed through the cavernous space. Then from somewhere above, I heard it, a voice clear now whispering my name. Daniel. I froze in terror. My name. No one should know my name. I ran. I didn't look back. I sprinted through the maze of shelves, my flashlight bouncing wildly, until I reached the stairwell. I slammed the door behind me, tried to calm my shaking hands. I leaned against the metal railing, listening. Nothing. The whispers were gone. The scraping had stopped, but the sense of being watched didn't fade. I could feel in the shadows, in the corners of my eyes, just beyond where the light reached. I returned to the security office, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I'd seen something in the shadows. Maybe my mind was playing tricks after too many late nights. I checked the cameras, but the ones covering the second floor were dead. Blown fuse, probably. Maintenance would fix it in the morning. I told myself to calm down, sat in the office chair, and tried to focus on the monitor showing the ground floor. Then I saw movement. A figure, tall and thin, standing at the end of an aisle. I froze. My flashlight flickered, and when it returned, the figure was gone. I blinked, staring at the monitor. There was nothing. I leaned closer. That's when I heard it. Not on the cameras, not outside the office, but inside my head. A whisper. Clear. Direct. You can't leave. I stood up, backing away from the desk. My mind was racing. I grabbed the radio, calling the night manager, my voice shaking. You have to check the warehouse. There's something here. Silence. Static. Then the same whisper, now louder, coming through the radio. Daniel. I dropped the radio. It hit the floor, static buzzing, then silence. I couldn't stay. I ran toward the exit, toward my car in the lot. As I reached the front doors, I felt it, a presence behind me, cold and heavy, like someone had pressed a hand against my back. I didn't look. I just ran, threw open the door, and sprinted across the empty lot. My keys trembled in my hand as I started the car and peeled out of the parking lot. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't work the next night. I haven't gone back since. But sometimes I hear it. A whisper, barely audible, just my name. Not over the phone, not on the radio, not in person, inside my mind like it's rooting itself there. And I know it's waiting for me to go back, waiting for me to be alone. I've tried rational explanations, wind in the vents, rats scratching in the walls, stress, but none of it fits. There's a coldness to it, a sentience. I can feel it when I'm home, creeping in corners of my apartment, when the lights flicker, when I'm alone in the kitchen. Sometimes I see shadows out of the corner of my eye, too tall, too deliberate, slipping between rooms. The most terrifying part is the certainty that one day, if I let my guard down, it will follow me back to that warehouse or wherever I go next. It knows me. It's patient, and it's hungry for attention. I have nightmares almost nightly now, waking up to find shadows standing at the foot of my bed, breathing me in. I don't tell anyone. My friends, my family, they'd laugh it off or call me paranoid. But I've learned one thing the hard way. Fear is real, and it has a shape. It follows you, and sometimes it waits in places you should have never entered alone. I will never work nights again. I will never go near a warehouse. I will never, ever be alone again in a dark, silent space. And yet, sometimes I hear my name faintly in the quiet of my apartment, always whispering, always reminding me that it's still there, still watching, still waiting for the night I am foolish enough to return. I never believed in the supernatural. Never. I was practical, logical, and painfully aware of the fact that most haunted stories were either exaggerations or outright fabrications. That belief lasted until my first night as a security guard at the old Harlem Medical Center. By day, it was a functioning hospital, bustling with doctors, nurses, and patients. By night, however, it became something entirely different. A decaying, cavernous building full of stale air, creaking floors, and shadows that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. I was assigned to the third floor, the old psychiatric wing, which had been abandoned for over a year. Management said they just needed someone to make sure no one trespassed. Easy work, they said. I was warned that the building had some structural issues, but nothing dangerous. I arrived at 10 p.m., flashlight and radio in hand, thinking it would be a slow, boring shift. I signed in, grabbed the keys, and walked up the elevator to the third floor. As soon as I stepped out, I noticed the smell, stale antiseptic mixed with mildew and something metallic like blood long dried. The hallway was long, fluorescent lights flickering intermittently. The paint was peeling, and old patient charts were stuck to walls, faded and curling at the edges. I started my rounds, checking each door, making sure they were locked and intact. The first hour was mundane. I heard the occasional drip of water from broken pipes, the distant hum of the HVAC system, and nothing else. I even joked to myself that the building was haunted by dust, chuckling as I made notes in my logbook. Then the noises began. At first, it was subtle, soft, almost imperceptible tapping, like fingernails rapping lightly against wood. I stopped and listened. The sound came from the far end of the hallway, where the old patient rooms were. I shone my flashlight down the corridor, the beam trembling slightly in my hands. Nothing. Just empty doors, peeling paint, and shadows stretching along the cracked linoleum floor. I shook my head and laughed nervously. Old pipes, I muttered, but the unease had already settled in my chest. I continued my rounds, but every few steps, I heard it again, a soft, deliberate tapping, moving closer, faster than it should have. My skin prickled, goosebumps rising along my arms. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" My voice echoed down the hall, empty and hollow. No reply. The tapping stopped. Silence. I tried to focus on my routine, checking each room, making sure no one was hiding inside. Each door I opened revealed nothing, just dusty beds, broken chairs, and peeling wallpaper. It was around midnight when I reached room 312. This room had always been off limits. The door was locked from the inside. Management warned me to stay clear. But as I walked past it, I saw movement inside through the cracked glass panel. A figure, pale and thin, was standing just inside the door. I froze, my heart pounding. The figure didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I stepped back, shining my flashlight directly into the glass. The reflection was empty. The room was empty. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks, shadows forming faces. I forced myself to continue my rounds. That's when the whispering started. Low, almost imperceptible, coming from all directions at once. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt them, like a cold breath against my ear. I spun around. Empty hallway. Every room I checked was locked and bare. My rational mind screamed at me, but the primal part of me, the part wired for survival, whispered leave. By 1 a.m., I was on edge. Every sound made me jump. The hum of the lights, the drip of water, the faint scraping of chairs across the floor. I kept my flashlight close, moving cautiously. That's when I saw it again. In the corner of my eye, a shadow, tall and thin, flicking across the hallway faster than any human could move. I spun to face it. Empty hallway. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but the shadow lingered in my mind. My pulse was hammering, my hands shaking. Then I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, following me from behind. I turned quickly, swinging my flashlight, but nothing was there. The steps stopped whenever I stopped. I started walking again. The steps resumed. Panic set in. My radio crackled, static filling the air. I tried to call front desk. "This is Daniel. I need assistance." The static swallowed my words. Then a voice whispering through the radio, distorted and barely audible. "Don't leave, stay." I dropped the radio, my hands trembling. I ran down the hallway, trying to find the stairwell. The third floor seemed endless, corridors stretching farther than they should. Doors appeared where I hadn't seen them before. Shadows shifted unnaturally, crawling along the walls, sometimes forming shapes that looked like faces screaming silently. I could feel eyes on me, cold and heavy, following every step. I finally reached the stairwell, throwing the door open. The stairs were dark, the beam of my flashlight bouncing wildly. I descended quickly, but the whispering followed, faint, urgent, and impossible to ignore. Daniel, Daniel. The sound seemed to come from the walls, the ceiling, even beneath the floor. My heart felt like it would burst from my chest. I reached the first floor and bolted toward the exit. When I pushed open the front door, the night air hit me like a wall. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys, my mind racing. I dared to glance back at the building. For a second, I saw something standing in the third-floor window, watching me. Pale, thin, and impossibly still. Then it disappeared. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't return to that job. But it didn't end. Sometimes in my apartment, I hear footsteps on the floor above me, even though I live alone. Shadows shift in the corner of my vision. Occasionally, when I look in the mirror, I catch a pale figure standing behind me, vanishing when I turn. And the whispering, it's never far away, always calling my name. I've tried to ignore it, try to convince myself it's stress or sleep deprivation. But deep down, I know the truth. There's something in that building. Something patient, something intelligent, something that waits in silence until it knows you're alone. And once it's noticed you, it doesn't forget. The worst part is knowing it isn't bound to the building. Whatever it is, it followed me. I can feel it, always, in the periphery of my vision, in the corners of my apartment, in the hum of electronics at night. And sometimes when I lie in bed, I swear I hear the third floor calling me back, whispering my name, urging me to return. I haven't, but I know it's only a matter of time. And when it comes, there will be no one to help.